to do something different. And in doing something different, Donald Trump was elected president. And brother Ellyson, brother Danny, what I want to share is this. I lost a friend the other day that called and asked me a question about Donald Trump. And I said Donald Trump is going to win, whether you like it or not. And that individual said, but he's such a liar. I said, well, give me one lie. And the lie was that he said, inject Clorox. Mm. And so I had to say, you didn't hear that. I know you didn't hear that. Okay. I keep up with these things. Is that all you've got? And then when that was shut down, it was, well, he's such a liar. He's crazy. I said, crazy? What about what he delivers? And it reminds me of a time with Brother Danny when I went into a Chevron gas station to buy me it may have been a Coke 45 or a Steel Reserve. Yes, people, I drink beer. And this guy saw me with my Trump hat on and he said, why are you voting for that idiot? And I turned and I looked at him and I said, but you're a cashier. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a cashier, all right? Nothing at all. But why would you call somebody who is a billionaire, didn't start out a billionaire, didn't become a billionaire by being in government, but did it through his adeptness at business, his acumen, all right, to run a business and went from a millionaire to a billionaire. And most folk don't understand that it's like comparing one penny, all right, to $20,000 bills, all right? And I may even be off on that. But that is what this man accomplished, and not from personally enriching himself by being in government. And so folk that got upset with me because I recounted that story, I have to say to them, you don't call people ignorant or idiots or crazy because you may not understand what's actually taking place. And Brother Danny, that guy didn't understand. My friend just didn't understand. But when you are so full of hate that you can't see nothing else, that is the end result. Thank you. I yield my time back to the host, Mr. Danny Ellyson.
And Derrick, I appreciate your insertion there. Inside, we have record early voting turnouts nationwide, especially in Georgia. The turnouts are phenomenal, but they're claiming that the wait times are through the roof. There's people waiting in excess of 10 hours to be able to work at the polling areas. Alex, what is your assessment on how the polls are running right now with early voting?
Well, what I've been hearing and seeing, and I talked about a little bit earlier today, is that I think that not only now, but for the past years, there has been a multi-partisan effort to delegitimize our elections and election system. I mean, you see it with allegations of voter fraud and suppression, both from, you hear it from the president, but you also hear it from Stacey Abrams. Like, I mean, you have everyone talking about this. And I think that that's the narrative that's being pushed, is that somehow our elections are questionable or illegitimate. And the issue is that as we move closer to election day, I mean, we're just going to keep hearing that constantly. And then when votes, like the final tallies, aren't available on the day of the final day of the election, that's going to continue through vote counting. And, there'll be constant allegations that the other side somehow is illegitimate. And I think that does not bode well for our country. And I mean, I think it ties into what you mentioned earlier very briefly regarding, the Supreme Court. You have Justice Barrett. The nominations are going on right now, the hearings. But I mean, you hear about court packing. And that's just what scares me, is that is another way of delegitimizing another major institution. And I think that if you do that by putting more people on the Supreme Court just for purely political reasons, that undermines the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, one of the few institutions left that is supposed to be a check on government power. I mean, it's already clear that the political system is being delegitimized. If you add on the Supreme Court's check on government power being delegitimized by adding political appointees, by adding more justices, something that was decried in history when it was proposed by FDR, the idea that it's being brought up now is a good idea, as shown in last week's debate with Biden and Harris. I mean, I think that our country's in a lot of trouble if this constant drumbeat of delegitimizing everything in our society keeps up. So that's I know that's a little bit more than just the election lines, but I mean, I think that ultimately, I mean, it's an easy explanation. If there's a long line on Monday, it was the first day of early voting, but you're going to end up with this narrative regardless of the truth. The truth doesn't matter anymore to the media, and or the politicians. So that's where I think we're headed. I think it's a very dangerous place. We're going to have a very contentious 4 years coming up.
Well, Alex, I think that's a brilliant segue, right? So, Josie, coming to you, Derrick talks about the false narrative. President Trump is a liar. We're going to put words in his mouth. Alex points out the false narrative from the media. Our elections are compromised. Our Supreme Court is compromised. All of this on the eve of a major election across our country. Josie, what do you see there locally in your district when it comes to your voting turnout, accessibility to early voter polls, and the response to Donald Trump? Your mic is muted, Josie. Go for it.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I got you. We can hear you.
Okay. So the narrative is going the same way. It's not going to change. It's even going to get worse. But the social media, the internet is giving them another front. So it's up to us, the citizen, to decide which one we are going to believe. And when it comes to the voting this week, I have a few citizens from the DeKalb area, because DeKalb is one of the counties who is inside the district number 4. They are messaging me privately. It was an honor voting for you today. So people are going out there, they are voting, and they are exercising not only the privilege, but also the responsibility to elect somebody who can give them results. Regardless that the media tells you the opposite, we have to look at the results. Before the pandemic, Donald J. Trump gave us to our minority communities the opportunity zones. He gave us the small business opportunities and all these programs. And then the pandemic came, hit us, and then the looters came right behind them and destroyed everything that was built up. Now, the next project that President Trump is bringing to the Black community is the Platinum Project, which is $500 million to invest that again in the Black community, for Black by Black, to the Black community. So that is something that the results talks louder than the talk. Thank you, Danny.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's good to hear that you've got proactive action taking place in Georgia 4. It's exciting to see the communication. There's been a long awaited stride for people to get to the polls. And what I really like to see about this, Brian, coming to you, the excitement is unbelievable right now, that people are communicating how happy they are at the opportunity for finally being able to vote. It's been a long wait. And a lot of people are coming out showing their cards that they weren't showing during the campaign trail. They weren't showing before. Record turnout. People have their minds made up. They've been researching, and now we're getting a lot of that confirmation on the back. Brian, are you experiencing any of the euphoria from our current voter base? You're on mute, Brian.
I'm happy about the motivation out there. I'm disappointed in the fact that, like, for example, in the race that Derrick and I are in, I've sponsored a series of debates, 14 of them. We've had 12 of them so far. And we've had a couple other debates that we have participated in, and other candidates have participated, but the $1 million candidates ignore it and don't participate. So now we're having early voting, and we haven't heard from the $1 million candidates other than the fact their 30-second commercials or their focus group answers. But they're not really answering the real questions, like, for example, what you're going to do on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, taxes, and spending. Where are you on the Constitution? You know, are you getting a failing grade on the Constitution? Well, why should we send you back there? I mean, that's something Derrick and I always try to point out on the Constitution. But they're not answering the big questions. They're just trying to look pretty or look handsome and say, vote for me. I'm the popular candidate. Well, guess what? That's not going to get it solved in Washington D.C. We need people up there with the gravitas necessary to start making changes that are the best thing for this country. Right now, the list of candidates, the $1 million candidates, they're not it.
Well, I can absolutely agree with that. We've been inundated with the mailers and the commercials over the radio and commercials over the TV. And it absolutely amazes me that in none of those races are we hearing anything about the actual policy positions and or the competition that surrounds them. You would think you would hear quite a bit more. Moving on for just a second, let's stay a little bit closer to President Trump. One of the biggest contentious conversations right now on both sides of the aisle, some of the rhinos taking side with the fact that President Trump having COVID, admitting that he has COVID, getting extreme medical attention at amazing levels provided to our president, obviously, through the Bethesda medical system, is now out in campaigning. And there are people saying that it is a reckless decision. He is taking things into his own hands, and he is going to cause damage to other people. Derrick, come on, man. What say you? You're on mute, Derrick.
All right. Yep. You're right. What say I is poppycock. Look, I was asked by a group my thoughts on the pandemic. Point number one, and Danny, hear me. If masks work and they are mandating them, ergo, we're mandating that you wear a mask because mask works. Then if you have on your mask, you are safe, all right? Now you got on your mask, you're safe. So if I don't have on my mask by choice, which I believe in liberty and freedom, I should have that. If I get sick and die, it's nobody's fault but mine, then that's on me. But you've got on your mask. You're safe. What's the problem? Then they add another caveat, 6 feet. Okay, you got on your mask. I don't have on mine. Stay 6 feet away. You are doubly safe. Even though I don't have on my mask, you've got on yours and you are 6 feet away. You can't have it both ways, Danny. Either the mask and distancing works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, why are you interfering with my going to the grocery store? Why are you interfering with my being with my loved one at the hospital? Do you know that the numbers are now starting to come out that the World Health Organization said, Danny, 1 in 1,000, 0.01%, 1 in 1,000 die. CDC said 2 in 1,000, and I may have them reversed, all right? That is insignificant. Now, I'm not diminishing the death of anyone. I am simply saying the severity of this disease that has been put out has been nothing but lies. And then yesterday, I saw where the World Health Organization has come out and said, do not shut down. That does more damage than it has done good. after $85 trillion has been lost. So, Danny, you know me, outside of this environment, I have been telling people it is not what you are being led. You know, Danny, I went and had a special mask made, the rebel flag. I know a lot of people like to say Confederate flag, but I call it the rebel flag because they rebelled against the country in order to keep slavery alive, which is why that is on this particular mask, along with the Nazi symbol, communism, force. To put on a mask because I am being mandated to me is nothing more than a type of mark of the beast. You cannot buy or sell.
Join the meeting
Without the mask. So that's why I had that made. And I keep it in my car. So if I go someplace that I got to go in, Danny, I run back out to my car and I put that mask on and I walk in, and anybody that wants to look at me and mouth off, I will tell them, I got on a mask, so back up. And if you don't like me having my mask on, see my Second Amendment on my hip.
And that Davis Jackson.
All right. And that's where I leave.
Join the meeting.
So, you know, I have never been into the nonsense about the mask. That's why I don't wear any. And I'm fine. And I have probably been infected with COVID, but I'm healthy. I don't have COPD. I don't have heart disease. I don't have any other type of pre-existing conditions that would make me vulnerable to the disease. And if you look at the numbers of Florida compared to New York, if you got a brain and you think, you have to ask yourself, why are the deaths in Florida almost 1/3 of those deaths that are in New York? Well, I got an answer for you, because the mayors in those particular cities were sending people with the virus into nursing homes. The nursing home deaths count for over half of the corona deaths. And that's just, that is what it is. So, you know, with that, I yield back, Mr. Ellyson, and you got one on deck whenever you're ready for him.
I see that. Hey, so Josie, coming over to your camera view, folks, tonight we've got a special introduction. We've got at the roundtable live citizens with questions. Sir, if you would introduce yourself and ask your question and address who you're asking.
Good evening, beautiful people. My name is Leo Armstrong, a resident in the Adamsville, Atlanta community. My following thoughts are not my personal, but I would be somewhat considering as an unofficial presentation of that abroad. Piggybacking from the previous comment.
Hey, sir, if I could get you to move a little bit closer to the mic for me.
Piggybacking off of the previous comment of the Constitution and following into Mr. Grayson's comment, getting the Black community more so on the vote, emphasis on the younger community. I'm speaking for them and getting clarity on if integrity and morality is such a huge part of what even made America great, what instills a good human nature. And that has not been a pivotal focus with the Trump campaign, despite the policies, despite the advocacy for all businesses. If that aspect is missing, which is such a core of human society and so important to love, which is the core of anything, how do you plan to reach or bridge the gap with the youth and the Black community if such a core of their nature is not taken into consideration or not acknowledged on an everyday basis? And there's constant, and following into suit of Mr. Grayson's, I think I completely agree with him with his rights. He made very sound statements, and they were right for him. But what about the people who are fearful of their safety, I just feel like there's a focusing on the broad spectrum to get everybody on one suit and further from division. And I feel like fear is the biggest divider. So if we can alleviate that, just I guess considering all of those aspects that I've named, how do you feel like we can bridge that gap?
So Derrick, we'll come to you with the response to his question.
Sure, Danny. Young man, I hear what you're saying. And there is such a broad spectrum of things that you mentioned that we don't really have time to go into tonight. But let me say this to you, young man. Being Black myself, and I'm going to try and deal with just a few points here and there, because you brought up fear. And I think that is because of what we see going on with the perception that there is racism within police departments nationwide. That is a fallacy. That is what you're being told. Now, if you were to do the research and look at the actual numbers, you will see that bad cops, and I always distinguish them by saying bad cops kill more white people than they do Black people. And I'm talking about unarmed white people. These are statistical facts that you can look up. All you got to do is be willing to go and look it up. So the next question is, well, why is it happening? Why are brothers being killed by cops? Because I already said, we don't hear about the white ones. Why the Black ones? Because that is for political expediency. Get you mad, get you pissed off, keep you pissed off, and then we can then lead you down the path that we want to take you. So 2 to 3% of police are bad. 2 to 3% are bad. The question is, why are they still police? If you look at the cops that have been exposed, that have been put out there, you will see that they had something in their jacket, but they weren't removed. The fault of that are police unions, sheriffs, and mayors, because they have the power to get rid of bad cops, but they don't get rid of bad cops because bad cops fit a narrative. If people were to really do a deep dive, Danny, they would see in 1965, after the Voting Rights Act, they passed qualified immunity. Okay, well, they done took away Jim Crow. So let's move towards giving these cops qualified immunity. So when they go and do something, we can say it was done in the name of the law. Most cops are good cops. If I were a police officer, and I know many police officers, do you think, Danny, that I would ride in a car or be a party to knowing that a racist cop was on the force and not say anything? See, people don't even think about that. I work with City of Atlanta. Most of the police officers are Black, but you're going to call City of Atlanta Black cops. But check this out, Danny. The police department was so bad that when they kill somebody, they now had the GBI doing all of the investigations for every cop involved shooting because of the number of Black cops. It ain't had nothing to do with racism. And that's what I keep trying to explain to people. Then secondly, the fear. Have you been taught how to deal with a police encounter? And look, being Black, I have had at least a dozen encounters with police officers. Never had a beat down put on me. Never. Got pulled over one time. Cop asked me, well, can I search your vehicle? I wasn't unruly. I wasn't nasty. But I told him, hell no. You can't search my vehicle. Not without a warrant. Go get one. I know my rights. And I asserted them. We aren't teaching our children how to deal with cops. There was a case 2 weeks ago. Young man driving, 19 years old. Police get in behind him, light him up. Instead of pulling over, he pulls a block away, parks in front of his house, then jumps out of his car and runs over to where his mother is. You don't get out of your car and run to where your mama is. You sit in your vehicle and you wait and see what the police officer has to say. Dealing with the police officers requires education. It requires education. And many of our young brothers and sisters don't have that education. And so there is no need to fear the police when, one, you understand how to deal with an interaction, and two, you understand what your rights are. So again, I could go on and on and on all night, but we don't have the time for that. But there is no need for anybody to fear the police. And I'm going to say it, and I have said it before. Police departments, by and large, are not racist. We have a problem with corrupt politicians, and we have a problem with bad cops that are not removed from the police force when they have shown themselves to be one that does not need to have a badge or a gun. I yield my time back.
Derrick, I thank you for that. Sir, I know that you had asked several layers of questions, and I understand that Derrick can take it on one. I want to bring Annette Davis-Jackson into the call here. And Annette, I don't know if you were able to hear the prior question, but what I drew from it was one of the parts of the questions was about bridging the gap between young voters and those of us that are politically sound and understand the research, we understand policy, whereas the younger crowd does not so much invest in the policy and they feel like they are not heard. How do we create the bridge that closes that gap? And Annette, after answering this question, you'll also be extended another 7 minutes for your time here on the show.
Well, how do you bridge young voters? You simply talk to them. You know, you have to get out and talk to young voters. You have to go to high schools. You know, if you're, in the market, if you're at a political function, you have to really seek out the young voters and you have to ask, what do they think? How do they think that they can be involved in the microcosm of America? That's what you do. I mean, it's really simple. You go to the high schools, you become a mentor, you become a coach. I'm a former college coach. So I've coached robotics, I've coached golf and tennis, a basketball announcer. You have to be where young people are. You got to be at the skating rink. You got to be at the football games. Kids love football. You got to be where kids are. You got to be at the, you got to be everywhere that they are. But particularly if you're at a political rally, go and talk to a young person and you'll find out that, let me tell you, they are brilliant. And we need to bring them into the microcosm just to really learn what the infrastructure of America is. I mean, that's a simple deduction for me. You got to go talk to them. I have a 20 and a 19-year-old, and I have to talk to them because they're being programmed into something else. And in order to not be programmed, you have to tell them to go research. So that's the key, to get young people to go research.
Absolutely. Now, sir, I see that you've had your hand raised, and I want to come back to you over there on Josie's camera. It looks like you've got a follow-up to your question.
Mr. Grayson, as well as
Little bit closer to the mic for me.
Piggybacking off of Mr. Grayson about the fear of police and not needing the fear of police, and then kind of segueing very briefly into the comments made by the latter person. What confused me at the age of 17 with a 3-point GPA is being charged as a convicted felon for something that I communicated well, I did all the P's and Q's, but I was railroaded. Now, what pissed me off, as Mr. Grayson so poetically said, is 2 years later, at 19, running into the same officer who told me in so many words that, hey, I remember you. Oh, you own your own business now. I knew there was something special about you. I'm sorry, but I was just really going through something. I was really depressed and really going through something at that time. She apologized for her profiling me, for having me be a convicted felon to this day, or whatever she was going through emotionally. So I did nothing wrong. So I once was confused and once was pissed about that. And that is just one of many stories that I have encountered as an intelligent, well-spoken Black man with no ill intentions. Maybe it's the way I carry myself. Maybe it's the community that I live in, but it's very resonant. And segueing that into the previous comment, the reason why there is no desire to research, because there's no faith into the powers, the people that we put in powers, and how that trickles down to the police force and the et cetera, et cetera. One of my favorite phrases, no raindrop is to blame for the flood. So we can talk and make points, but it's about solutions, effective solutions, and not talking around them. Because there is, whether it is 2 or 3%, that 2 and 3% are affecting every day 200 to 300 people maybe, and they are carrying that on. And that needs to be considered. That is important. It cannot be ignored when we speak about the Black community having the desire to research and vote for when there is no faith. Or I yield my time to my brother. He has
Danny, and we got you got the other young gentleman coming up. Let me say, I heard you, young man, but the Bible teaches that my people perish for a lack of knowledge, but there's a comma after knowledge, for they have rejected knowledge. So to think that to not research because of what's going on around you, you have no hope of overcoming the system at all if you are not willing to research and to understand. And case in point, I always point out, had Colin Kaepernick decided not to take a knee, but to go to a city where a brother was unrighteously murdered by a police officer and said, let me organize the people and let us do a recall of the mayor or the sheriff, you would have saw some substantive change. Because the one thing that politicians fear most is the loss of office. That is what people don't understand. That is why research is important. Because if you don't know how to fight the system, you have a way of overcoming it. And going at the system with crime has never resulted in anything positive. Martin Luther King did not use violence to overcome the system. Martin Luther King used the system to overcome the system. Case in point, let's put our money back in our pocket. Let's not pick up the garbage. Let's not ride the bus. It took a while, a year in one of those cases, but by doing that, they brought the bus system to their knees. Mm-hmm. They brought the sanitation system to their knees because Martin Luther King understood research, and Martin Luther King found a way to overcome the system. So burning up our own neighborhoods is not the answer. Engaging in violence to get the attention is not the answer. You only hurt your cause. I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I got a sign in my front yard that says, nothing inside worth dying for. And I mean that. There ain't nothing up in this camp worth your life. Mm-hmm. All right? However, just like I invited these two young men into my home tonight to be on this show, I did so because I work with young people and I want them to understand knowledge is the key to power, and wisdom, proper wisdom, is how you guide that knowledge into making change. And it's one of the reasons why I'm running for office, because I know how to bring about effective change, but the people have to be made aware of the fact that Democrats, politically speaking, and their policies are not the solution. Republicans, politically speaking, in their policies, they are not the solution either. Both parties are as corrupt as hell. I'm sorry, yes, I said it, and there are some Republicans that won't like me for it. but I never walk around with a banner saying I am a Republican. I tell people I am a conservative first, a Christian above all. And that is how I walk. So look, I don't want to monopolize the time. The other young man wants to speak. We have Alex, who is back. We've got Annette Davis Jackson. We have Brian Slawinski, who has not spoken. So Danny, please forgive me, but I know this is off book, but I wanted these young men to have an opportunity to speak tonight. And when you're ready, Danny, the other young man is on deck.
Absolutely, and we're going to get to him, and then we'll move on to our pressing schedule. Sir, if you'll come closer to the mic, introduce yourself, and you can ask your question. If you would also, if you intend to direct it towards somebody, announce who that is. If not, if it's an open question, I'll direct it for you.
Hello, world. My name is Harold Anderson, and I'm a resident of the...
I need a little bit more volume on that mic.
I'm a resident of the Allenville community, and I just kind of want to chime in on the lady say that you have to talk to the youth, and that doesn't always work, and that's proof in media because they follow what they see. So I would say lead by example. Maybe if they see their peers doing positive things, creating their own businesses with the natural God-given talents that they've been blessed with, that will cause a ripple effect. So my question is to Joseph Cruz.
Yes.
With the project, what exactly do you intend to target or keen in on? Like what?
You're talking about the Platinum Project?
Yes.
Yes, the Platinum Project is money available for the Black community in every city in the United States. We're talking about here too, in Georgia. And there is money, not only in the federal that we can bring down when I get elected, but also there is the Platinum Project, which is on the side. So there is a lot of things that we can do for the Black community here in the District Number 4. So the $500 million, the billion dollar, I'm sorry, $500 billion that is going to be invested in the Black community by Blacks. Okay, it's going to be from here, from Georgia. It's not going to be from nobody else coming from another state. That's going to be implemented in infrastructure and fixing some houses there in the neighborhoods that are affecting our community. And they're going to be money for small businesses, for entrepreneurship. So we can help out the minority community who are the colored ones. And when I say colored, I'm talking about Blacks, Latinos, but mostly Black, to lift up this community and so they can start experiencing the American dream when somebody's getting independent, economic and financial independent, and healing. When I talk about healing, it's not only economical healing, but also we need to bring spiritual healing to the community too. Because we cannot keep going through gatekeepers of hell, reminding us of our past, if they are not giving us solution on how to overcome that pain, the anger. Because what I learned about District Number 4 is a lot of Blacks in District Number 4 are people of faith, and they believe in freedom. And when I say faith, we need to bring...
Mind if I chime in?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so Mr. Grayson said that knowledge is power.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would just like to throw a suggestion out.
Go ahead.
How about with those small businesses, create classes?
Classes like teaching people how to...
How the the steps to creating a small business, the ins and outs.
Love it. Because this is what we're doing, what we're supposed to be doing. Elder people like Grayson, who is old, like Slovinsky right here, you know, elder people, and me, I will include myself because I am over 50, regardless that I look 26. Okay, me, we're supposed to be teaching the new generation like you and the little kids, like I told you again outside. Mom, I got your back. I know you depend on some program, but let me teach you and let me show you children. 17, 18, 16, 20. Let me show them how to achieve the American dream. Let me show them how is American in the other side of the coin. It's not only dependency on government, but let me show them the other one, the other side, which is the prosperity. The Platinum Project will bring that freedom completely at last. Like Martin Luther King said, we are free at last. And when I say free at last, I'm talking about financially too. Okay.
So Josie, I've got to step in for just a second. I've got to come over to Brian. Brian wants to insert here. Brian, if you'll go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'd like to just comment about that, the mentoring type program. One of the things that I utilized when I was growing up, I don't know if you've ever heard of SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. It was kind of a mentoring program where you can ask people that have kind of retired from business about business, and then they mentor you in that. As well as I think we need more financial literacy when it comes to in high school and stuff like that. When how to open a checking account, how to get a credit card, what credit is, how you get it like that. One thing I would suggest to you is I don't know if you've ever heard of the gentleman called Robert Kiyosaki. He did Rich Man Poor Dad. He has a game that teaches children about investments. It's called cash flow. He has a cash flow game for kids as well as one for adults. Now I have one for kids that I utilize with my children. We play the game and they learn about what an asset is, what a liability is, etc. And they learn about all the different things that come when it comes to investing. That would be a huge thing in the for mentoring young people. And I have 8 children, so I utilize it all the time. I mean, I have a 22-year-old, 20-year-old, 18-year-old, 15-year-old, 2 13-year-olds, and 2 7-year-olds, and we get them all playing. And that's how they learn. They don't all learn the right way, but now I have 2 13-year-olds that love to play because, hey, I can win. I can be financially self-sufficient. They love it when they win because that's what then they learn about what assets are, what liabilities are, what all the different types of investments there are, and it's huge.
Brian, for that, we thank you. To the gentlemen that joined us tonight asking your questions here at the roundtable, we want to welcome you for a show's first. Thank you very much for your participation. Moving on with the schedule, Alex, I'm glad to see that you're back. And Alex Johnson, I will yield to you your 7 minutes for tonight.
Oh, well, glad to be back. Sorry to drop out for a few minutes, but yeah, what I really was wanting to talk about tonight is I touched on it a little bit earlier, and that's the whole idea of court packing and the way that has suddenly become a political issue. I still remember back when I was growing up, the whole idea of the switch in time that saved 9 was when the Supreme Court under Roosevelt was turning around and blocking a lot of big government policies, and he threatened to add more judges to the court, and then the court started allowing those big government federal policies and regulations in place, and that in a way saved the integrity of the court, as opposed to it becoming a sort of like a super legislature being judges being appointed and added to the court just to achieve executive and legislative branch ends. People can debate whether or not the Supreme Court should have ever had that power back at the beginning with Marbury versus Madison, the idea that they could check government authority, but that was a very long time ago. Now it has become a bedrock of our country that allows that. And I think that after the debate the other week with Harris and Pence, I think that, you know, they talked about court packing. Pence really nailed down Harris on the idea that you know that they're flirting with the idea of adding more justices in order to get back at and achieve their ends, and get back at the fact that there are more judges appointed that are more likely originalists with the addition of Barrett. But even flirting with that idea is dangerous. I mean, there are plenty of countries in South America and Latin America that tried copying our Constitution. And a way they often get it wrong is the Supreme Court has too much sort of political power. And that's how you end up having, you know, like in Venezuela, I believe that their court backs the president in whatever he's doing to expand power. We have a very unique system with a check on power. And I think most citizens now in America don't realize the fragile nature of the separation of powers. And I think that is really concerning, in that I think a lot of people think that it doesn't really matter. They don't understand the history of it. They don't understand how that separation of powers is what stops, for example, President Trump from saying, you know, I can do whatever I want, or a President Biden from doing that. And the second you make it purely political by adding people because you didn't like the outcome, I think that sets a dangerous precedent. It's definitely legal. The federal government can change the court however they want to do it. The legislative and executive branches can legally do it. But the danger here is that with everything else being as unstable as it is, with the question of legitimacy of elections, the divided nature of our country, undermining that institution just on the Democrats' part or anybody's part, just so that they can win elected office, is an insult to the history of our nation and to the values for which it stands. I mean, it's one thing to add a judge in order to handle a caseload, but this is shamelessly in order to get a political outcome. So that is a very concerning idea that's even being floated. The fact that Democrats are even flirting with it is an insult to our country and its history. And if the Republicans are doing it, it'd be just as bad. So I hope that doesn't turn into anything worse, but I am frankly afraid it will. I mean, even now, just looking ahead, I mean, whoever wins this next election for president, it will be, the legitimacy of it is going to be continuously questioned for the next 4 years, and that is something that also does not bode well for our country. But that's all I have to say, and I appreciate your time.
Alex, thank you so much for your in-depth review there. Moving over to Miss Catherine Bernard. Catherine, welcome to the show. We thank you for being in attendance tonight, and I yield to you your 7 minutes tonight.
Well, good evening, Danny and everybody else. I've really enjoyed the comments and the young men that Derrick brought on tonight. I think it's so great to get folks, commenting on these issues, talking about politics, from something other than the perspective that you hear on the news with the shouting heads, pick A or B, those are your only choices. And, people like Derrick who can present a nuanced defense of conservatism on the principles, that's where you're going to change hearts and minds and have the potential to do good for other human beings, not just this continual argument of, who's worse, Democrats or Republicans. That's just a race to the bottom that I think it's clear that we're all losing. But I really liked the point about, young people are going to follow what other people are doing. That doesn't just apply to young people. And so for those of us who are trying to make a change in the political system, education, just like Derrick said, is so important, but we also have to look at what we're modeling. Are we showing people a model for success? And I've talked a little bit about what the issues that we're dealing with at the local government level here in Brookhaven. We've got a referendum on the ballot because the mayor wants to get rid of term limits. We've only been a city for 8 years, and he already wants to get rid of the 8-year term limit, which to me just seems very, very excessive. And the positive thing is it has actually gotten everyone's attention. And so people in the community are thinking, whoa, 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 have we lost control of our city? Have these government officials just completely forgotten their places? And so those of us who have been through this rodeo before with City Hall, we have to model how to interact with your politicians in a way that gets results. How to treat them, with respect when it's due, but you have to treat them like they are your employees, like they are your representatives, not like they are, officials and leaders who are the repository of authority themselves. And so I just love the idea of continuing to expand the circle of good people who are thinking hard about politics and how it can serve our neighbors, not, from the perspective of which talking heads can shout the loudest, but who can serve our neighbors the best and who can help us build the strongest communities. And I think, the answer to that is make sure you don't have government shooting innocent people on the street. Make sure you don't have people being choked to death. Make sure you don't have people getting their shops set on fire. And so there's just so much wonderful common ground on these things. And I'm always encouraged when I see people looking past the propaganda that is designed to polarize and divide and bringing it back to what we can all cherish together as Americans.
Catherine Bernard, as always, thank you so much and very well said. We appreciate you joining us tonight and every night that you make available to us. Tonight, folks, I'd like to welcome Mr. Paul Nalley. Paul, we will follow in the same invitation to you and give you 7 minutes for you to discuss the grand jury. Paul, if you're with us, it shows that you're still muted. All right, while we try to confirm communications with Mr. Nalley, Annette Davis Jackson, coming to you in the same order, we are going to provide you with 7 minutes.
Well, Catherine did a really good job of just talking about what needs to happen in the United States of America. And we need a blueprint overhaul, particularly in the state of Georgia. We need to see just what do citizens need, because we always talk about the we the people concept. And the we the people concept means what do the people need? How do they get it? And what does sustainability look like? Sustainability is everything. People talk about, hey, but we don't have jobs. But guess what? The Labor Department is saying we have more jobs than we can even fill. So what that says to me is that we need to go into a level of training. So retraining for 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 21 to 25, even seniors need to be retrained because there's seniors out there, and staff development does mean something if you're in the education arena or if you're in corporate. A lot of times people go to conferences and sit on a lot of webinars, and particularly now with Zoom going crazy, to heighten up their expertise. So to me, my tagline for United States Senate is put a shoe shine on your image, but more importantly, a polished Georgia. How do we become a polished Georgia? We become a polished Georgia by taking every area of our life and evaluating it and what can we do for improvement. Right now, we're in the improvement stage. As we look at the COVID-19 crisis, we didn't have crisis management in place at all. And the interesting part about it, we pay people in the government to do these type of things. We pay people on the private sector to practice crisis management, to know what logistics are. I'll never forget, I was an administrator for Panasonic during the 1996 Olympics, and I worked for Panasonic. And it was amazing, but I was responsible for logistics. I was responsible for transportation. I was responsible for security clearances. And the one thing that held true, they said if a bomb were to come to downtown Atlanta, and sure it did, what do you do? Well, I had already hired transportation personnel, and what they did was took all the vans home. So at least the broadcast engineers, if they needed to get to the facilities, they could still produce the Olympics. And that's what happened. Everybody kept their transportation vehicles within the 5-mile radius of the Olympic venue downtown in a warehouse. And they couldn't get to that warehouse after that bomb hit downtown. So it's very important that we forecast ahead of time. Even looking, what happens if now we're working to use smart grids. But what happens if our electricity goes out? We all use cell phones, and we all are going to be in trouble. You know, I'm pushing, hey, everybody go back and get your landline. Put your landline in place. Get you a generator. So we have to think beyond, because we don't know what's going to happen given the plight of what happened to us. Given the plight of what's happened to us in this particular country. So I will end there. It's just, we have to be ready more so than ever. We have to teach our children what it means to be ready and what it means to be mindful, looking everywhere that you go. It's amazing. And our seniors, we have to take care of our seniors. We have not in America taken care of our veterans. So I care about our veterans. I care about restructuring the VA hospital. It's so important because a lot of our veterans are out on the streets.
Annette Davis Jackson, we thank you. And coming from somebody with a collegiate background in Homeland Security, your words set very well with me. So as always, thank you tonight and for every other night that you have joined us. Moving over, Mr. Brian Slowinski. We're changing things up a bit. I'm going to extend to you 7 minutes as well, sir.
Well, I just want to touch base again about, I had one of my sons go down and get the game I was telling you about. It's called Cash Flow for Kids. It's basically what the rich teach their kids about money. And it's a great game for kids, and then they also have it for adults as well. It's a great way to mentor and help kids learn about money, as well as obviously adults. It'd be great to utilize that in the community. It's I think it's like $40-50. It's an expensive game, but you want to know something? If it teaches you about money, you've already well-placed dollars. So again, I want to get back to this election and what's going on. I think it's great that we're having a great turnouts, but again, I'm going to go back to not having debates available, not putting all the candidates in the debates, by putting percentages. Hey, you got to have a certain percentage. If you're on the ballot, you should be in the debates. Period. That's the way it should be. Also, the way these polls are being distributed. If you look at crosstabs, there's a thing about statistics. In Lion statistics, you can make anything come out the way you want it to be, just based on how you word the question, who you ask, and how it's asked. A great example. I'm running as a third party guy. Well, basically, if you basically have a third of America is 30% are Republicans, 30% are Democrats, and basically 40% are independents. But when they take these polls, they skew them. They'll do one will be 38% and the other will be 30%. Or, for example, if they want to make sure that if you represent one party or another, they'll take less. A great example is I looked at one of these polls that was 48% Democrat, 30-some% Republican, the opposite, and then only 9% independents. Well, that's going to kill any support for any kind of independence out there. Plus, if for example, Derrick's a great example. He's only been in one poll. There's been 19 polls, and his name was only put in there one time. That's very unfair for all candidates. So I think we need to really start looking at what the establishment is doing to basically keep themselves in power and not allow anybody else that's actually got a mind that actually could make a difference in the United States Senate to get up there. Because one person in the United States Senate who's doing the right thing already makes a majority of one. And one senator can do a lot of different things up there through blocking unanimous consent, through the use of filibuster, through different types of obstruction type things. You can make them read every bill word for word. There's tons of things that can be done to stop this nonsense that's going on up there. And that's what needs to happen.
Brian Slowinski, again, to you as well. As always, thank you for joining us tonight and every other night. We look forward to seeing you on the next roundtable. Coming back to you, Mr. Paul Nalley. Same extension to you, 7 minutes, sir, to talk about the grand jury. Looks like we lost Paul in the feed. All righty. Hopefully we can get him back around. Derrick, I want to come back to you and give you a 2-minute closeout, brother.
Danny, I appreciate you giving me a closeout, and Danny, please forgive me, but I monopolize a great deal of time. Please move on to the others, and Danny, I want you to be sure to give us, your monologue at the end, because I'm sure it will be greatly inspirational. Thank you.
We'll make sure that we get there. I'm just going to move back around for the sake of time here. Coming to you, Joseph Cruz, 2 minutes.
Okay, Joseph. Yep.
Closing time. Well, Josie Cruz right here. I'm running for the 4th Congressional District in Georgia, and it's a pleasure every week that I am here in the round table. Today was a little different, and it was very exciting. Hopefully, we can have some people next week. Again, we still have 20 more days for election. And I just wanted to let you know that I want to keep on doing this. I want to keep on doing this once a week so we can keep our people informed. And just pray for the people who's voting this week and next week and until November the 3rd, so they can vote biblically and in the Christian way, so I can be elected. Thank you. Go to my website, josiecruz2020.com.
Josie Cruz, thank you. To all of my panelists tonight joining us here at the round table, I want to thank you. And to all of our viewers, thank you for joining us on a night of communication here at the round table. I want to close out with these words exchanged to you. Tonight, we have all said so many different things about so many different topics, but really, truthfully, what was extracted from our moment shared here? First off and foremost, we can all agree that investing in the education of our children and their future is premier and priority. We also know through faith and through Scripture's teaching that if we lead our children in the way that they shall go, they will not depart far from it. See, folks, voting is contagious. Voting is your opinion. Voting is this voice and picketing and these signs that you have displayed all over your yard. When you walk up and down the streets and you march, that is your freedom. Those are your liberties. But voting is how you stamp your seal of approval on that which you march for. We can sit here and bicker and go back and forth and have conversations in and out about our beliefs, our stump speeches, what we like and what we don't. But at the end of the day, if we don't participate in our civil duties and engage in the rights that we have and the duties that we have to be voting in our elections, local, state, federal, and everything that pertains to a ballot, then we are wrong. We as the elders in our communities, our political civic engagement is seen. For those of us that sit on the couch and complain about what we see on CNN and Fox, CNBC, MSNBC, and all of the other news sources, your children, our children are watching. What are you doing to teach them the way that they should go so that they don't depart far from it? See, one thing that we've learned through history is that we've got a generational gap of people that forgot how to show their children to do things, but instead decided to tell them. I would challenge you on the eve of this election, as we approach just simply weeks away, a historical vote that could change so many different things for our nation, some for the good and many for the not so good. I would ask you to reflect within yourself. Is it worth walking up and down the street with your kids to show them how to ask people to participate? Is it worth it for you to conversate with people about voting? Lest it be your political position, but more about the education behind why you should vote, why you should participate, and why this education matters. If you want different, well, you're going to have to do different. It's very easy for all of us to constantly say and say and say. But in this year, here in 2020, myself, all of our panelists, and everybody here at the round table, we're asking you to do. Get out the vote. Go knock on a door. Take a friend to the poll. Vote early and publicize it. Be proud that you invoked your right to vote. You don't have to brag about your political opinions and who you voted for. If you're ashamed of it or you want to keep it to yourself, do that. But don't be afraid to take your little I voted sticker and put it up. Grab a couple extra for your kids too, and let them know that it was a family decision, a family vote, that you are a family that will stand by your constitutional rights, liberties, and duties. Tonight, I want to thank you for being here in attendance with all of us. From here at the round table, all of my panelists, our guests tonight, my family here down here in the Low Country, we bid you